Well, welcome back to the Better Men, Better Ball Player podcast. I'm your host, Trey Cobb. I want to thank you for joining us here on our 82nd episode of the podcast where we get a chance to talk to current head coach at Salem University, JT Heenan. Coach Heenan is the current head coach at Salem University, where he took over during the summer of 2020, which we all know the challenging time he had to take over in 2021. Prior to that, he was served as the assistant coach and recruiting coordinator from 2019 and 2020 seasons, where he also, before even that, he previously served as the assistant director of operations at West Virginia. During his time at West Virginia, he was also the grad assistant coach, where during that time they gained a regional berth into the NCAA Division I championship for the first time in 21 years. Former Mountaineer catcher, he's also served and did some work with PBR, Prep Baseball Reports, as the advanced scout and director for PBR during the 2017-2019 seasons. Coach Heenan, man, we went through a ton of stuff. During this, from talking about his culture, talking about his time for PBR, talking about what those events and what those things meant for him as a coach then as what they mean for a coach now. I thought that was great perspective. Led us through his culture binder and what he's trying to do to build a culture there at Salem, and the great work that he's doing there. The benefits of Division II and the rosters that they can do Division II versus Division I. People don't really know that. Gives a great depth into that. He talks about how he's quantifying and measuring an offensive player and everything they're doing in the player, really just to kind of define success inside their program and doing that and getting guys to buy into that. Just does a great job of filling those things out and talking baseball and talking really how he's done it. Really just opened up to a lot of things that he's doing, from his personal growth Mondays for his team, as well as just the whole curriculum that they have created inside their culture binder. So many more things where that came from his hitting journal and pitching journals and feedback form that they're doing. Is just really great stuff. And I can't wait to get into it with Coach Heenan. So again, thank you, Coach Heenan. Also can't thank those guys at Netting Pros as well. Netting professionals are improving programs one facility at a time. Will Miner, the guys at Netting Pros, man, specialize in design, fabrication, installation of custom netting for backstops, batting cages, dugouts, scoreboards, BP screens, and ball carts. They also design and install digital wall padding, windscreen, turf protectors, dugout benches, dugout cubbies, and more. Netting professionals continue to provide quality products and services to many recreation, high school, and college fields, facilities, and stadiums throughout the country. Contact Will Miner. Contact the guys at Netting Pros at 844-620-2707 or info@nettingpros.com. Visit them online at www.nettingpros.com or check out Netting Pros on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn for all their latest products and projects. Guys, continue to do it right and get involved in every aspect of the game. So thank you guys for that. Appreciate you. Love being part of the Netting Pros family. Will give me a chance to go out and talk to great guys like Coach Heenan. So great stuff. Like I said, a full thing of from his culture all the way down to how he's programming for his different buckets of hitters. Got into all that too. So we dive into a good bit of stuff, and I know you guys love it. Be sure to check out the notes on Podbean. The notes are definitely all there. I know most of the guys are checking out through just the podcast through Apple, but if you take the notes, and the notes are there on Podbean. So Coach Heenan, can't thank you enough. Here he is, head coach at Salem University, Coach JT Heenan.
PBR, I had a great experience with it. But like you said, I had no idea how any of that worked until I was fully in it. So, I mean, like my first showcase ever was the first one I worked. You know what I mean? Like I never attended one. So I mean, it was, and so, yeah. So, I mean, it's like you go to that. And so my impression was, you know, every kid here is going to be like a top level player. You know what I mean? Like my thought process was, if you're on a travel team or go to a showcase, you're like a legitimate Division I prospect, when in reality, all it is a platform. It's, you know what I mean? That's all it is. And it's a really good platform, but it's a lie detector too. So, I mean, you can you can go to a PBR showcase and learn. Like I'm going to learn if you throw 78, but you text me that you're throwing 86. That's what PBR does for me. You know what I mean? Like you got to go ball out at a showcase because that platform is going to either tell the truth or be a lie detector for you. You know what I mean? Like I'm going to go look and be like, hey, you might be telling me that you're 86, but the last time you threw and it was certified, it was not that.
Yeah.
But what I liked about PBR as a coach, like looking at it more so as a coach, was it gave me a platform as well to educate these kids. You know, like because I had recently experienced it as a player, and now being a coach, it was like, hey, you need to be prepared when you go to these showcases. You also need to like run on and off the field. You know what I mean? Like little stuff like that. But like when you have like, for example, I was at one event and they had cages available. I'm like before they hit, you know, in the showcase, it was like, you guys need to be over here like preparing to hit as opposed to just standing there for 45 minutes. So like I'd coach those guys up, or like catchers are catching balls from the outfielders, and rather than just doing it as like nothing, like teaching them how to properly catch at the plate. Because if you have a coach there, and if I'm watching a catcher and he's making like my mundane task into like an opportunity to get better, that's appealing. You know what I mean? So because again, at the end of the day, you have at those showcases, you have like anywhere from 2 to 4 hours in front of coaches and on video to like make a statement that like, hey, you should recruit me. So any opportunity I feel like is, you know, you got to find them within that time frame. But yeah, just to wrap it, I really liked my experience with PBR, and I think it's growing. Like I think it's far better than where it's in a much better place now, even from when I was there. Just with what they can do.
Oh yeah, it's definitely growing. Even with I think what they just did the JUCO, they just had a JUCO relationship. They just mellowed it up and doing that now.
Yeah, I mean,
and that's what JUCO needed.
Yeah, no, for sure. Because that's another thing. Like I mean, you know, like I recruit a lot of JUCO players too. But I mean, like you being on that side of it, like sometimes you can't find anything on JUCO guys. Like I'm like I'm trying to go through websites and you know the NCAA website, and like sometimes the stats aren't updated correctly. Sometimes the schedule's wrong. My best source is the kid. Like if I get their cell number. But what kid's gonna be like, yeah, I was terrible. You know what I mean? Or you know what I mean? Like, well, like I would be smarter than that. You know what I'm saying? So, and like access to video, but now like PBR, like I said, they're gonna give a better better representation of those kids.
Oh yeah.
So.
Yeah, and like you said, it's the lie detector, you know, because it's all what I like about PBR is like, and a lot of this, they're non-biased. Like it's just like
no doubt.
You are who you are, and it is what it is. We're here to see you, and then to scout different events. And I think it's so smart to get on the PBR JUCO level, you know, and what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're like, oh my, like those kids will be dying to give out, you know, even more exposure. You're giving basically 2 more years of exposure in their showcases, you know, with tying into PBR. So it's very smart.
Because what I've found with JUCO, it's the coaches that are usually the more vocal, or their players get better opportunities. You know what I mean? Like the coaches that are willing to talk at 9 p.m., you know what I mean, with me, and I'm not Alabama or Vanderbilt. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm
right.
You know what I mean? I'm a small D2, and they're willing to talk to me. Like I'm going to go get his guys, as opposed to if there's a coach I email and I don't hear anything. Like it's just so with PBR, like I think that's going to take some weight off those guys' shoulders for sure.
Yeah, another way to validate stuff too, because like you said, a lot of those guys are doing it on their own. You know, a lot of them are. I know there are some really good coaches who've got good relationships, but for the most part, those guys are doing it on their own. And PBR helps with that, you know, and definitely validates. Because like you said, they're not going to say they're bad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but that's the other thing. Like, I mean, you got to tell the truth, but
right.
You don't want to throw your guy under the bus. I mean, I've heard, you know, the best thing for coaches is like, hey, like this is just like I ask questions, they just give me black and white answers. Because as you know too, with Division II and Division III, like we don't have to hit on every guy. You know what I'm saying? Like they can be like, hey, this guy, he's not where he needs to be to compete for you, but he works really hard, or he's a great kid. Like I can take a chance on that kid as opposed to a D1 because I don't have like the roster restrictions they do. Whereas like there's always going to be 2 or 3 guys every year that like essentially it was like a coach was like, hey, take a chance on this guy. You won't regret it because he's a great kid. And there's always 2 or 3 of those guys that come in and end up having a huge impact because we can just develop them And if they buy in, there's a chance they perform. But if they buy in and they don't perform, at least they gave everything they had and they got to be a part of a program. But whereas like Division One, when you can only have 35 guys, like you can't miss. Like I think that's an advantage in my opinion in Division Two and Division Three, is you can
Yeah,
have a bigger roster. So
I think that's valuable information. Like that right there is gonna be the price of what it is, man. Like D1 can only have 35 roster spots, and how Division Two, Division Three, those rosters allows you to give a chance on a kid. I think that's pretty awesome.
yeah, well, it also depends on how you look at it. Like if you're a kid that like you believe that you need, if you're going to go to D2 or D3, like so you finished like your senior year and you had a really good year. Well, I want to go to like a mid-major or a Power Five, and that doesn't work out for you. And you think, well, if I go to a D2, I can start. Well, as you know, I mean, there's 22, 23-year-olds that are seniors at Division Twos, regardless if they're a good Division Two or a bad Division Two or a good D3, bad D3, that they would go and play at a really high level of Division One because they've been in
Yep.
college baseball for 3 to 4 years. So, it's just like any other thing. If you go like any other sport, you go in and like you're not going to be. It's a different speed. So, but if you're a player and you're like, hey, I want a better opportunity to play right away, yeah, Division Two is a better option. But that expectation comes with a lot of weight, where you're going to have to really figure it out in the fall. You're going to have to earn the respect of your teammates and your coaches really fast, even though it's not the Division One level. But the other side of it is you're competing potentially against, rather than 34 other guys at the Division One level, you might be competing against 60 other guys at the Division Two level. You know what I'm saying? Because you have these bigger rosters, but you also can have like a developmental squad or JV. But at the end of the day, it's still a challenge. But I truly believe we're playing with house money at Division Two right now, because I can have a bigger roster. I can develop players on, like my time, and they can still earn scholarship. And I mean, whereas Division One, I think you're going to see it come break time. Like these schools, there's 45 guys on rosters right now. They have to cut 10 guys in 2 months. I mean, that's not easy to do.
No.
So whereas we can, if we have injuries and, guys don't perform as the best they can, I'm going to have a viable option to bring someone else in.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah, I remember talking to Andrew Wright with Charleston. They were just so big into that development stuff. Like, so is that something that you foresee, like what you're trying to do with your program? You're trying to create like a developmental program?
Absolutely. I mean, it's to me, that's probably the primary like the thing I spend the most time on with my job is retention. So like, how can I keep a kid here? You know what I mean? Like that. So how that works for me is I need to program independently for each guy. Like they need to know. So on their side, they need to know where to be, what BP group they're in, what throwing program they have, what stretch routine they have, the strength program. I even write down when their classes finish. Like I have all that listed, because then every guy has, a valuable experience. Like they're not just like, hey, just show up and maybe you get reps. Because whether you're player number one or player, 50, you need to give the equal opportunity, because player 50 very well could be pitching for you in the 8th inning in a big game. You just don't know because it's the fall. But if I don't give them the same amount of opportunities, I don't know either. So that's the way we look at it, is we're gonna have big numbers, and we're gonna provide you with like all the resources of like development, and you're gonna have like a daily binder. You're gonna have culture meetings. You're going to get video work done. You're gonna have an opportunity to hit in our indoor facility throughout the day. You're gonna have BP plans set up for you. And then for me, it's a lot easier because I have all that set up. In practice, I can let my assistants work. I can coach guys up, and then we can evaluate. Like every week, we make lists of like who we think, like where they're at. Like, well, we literally have 4 lineups. We literally have a pitching like numbers, who's performed. So what that's done for us is, in my opinion, it's given us a chance to keep more of those guys. You know what I mean? So if I had 24 players, but I didn't plan for them and make them feel valued, I wouldn't keep them. Whereas if I have 50, and every single one of them feels valued, I might get the best out of a kid who's never been pre-exposed to any of all of that information or coaching, and now they end up being a really like a great player for us. A perfect example is we have a kid from Lost Creek, West Virginia named Brandon Gray, who is now a scholarship player, who last year, I kid you not, and if he hears this, he'll probably be mad at me, but he couldn't hit the ball out of the turtle last year. Like we'd have the machine at like 100 plus all the time. We still do it. And he couldn't hit the ball out of the machine. He really struggled with, like, it was a lot. The game was just a lot faster for him because he was from a small high school in West Virginia.
Yep.
And he just put his head down and worked. And he's literally a sophomore. He's the captain of our team, and he's gonna start somewhere because you can't get him out. He's the first one there and the last one to leave, and he's our best defensive player. He might play center field. He might play second base. I don't know, but he's the prime example. And he's put on 20 pounds because he was like 120 pounds when he got there. He's a prime example of, hey, I put the work in. I've invested in the resources, and now I'm reaping the benefits. Whereas there's, I'm sure there's a number of guys who you give them all that and they're like, hey, this isn't for me, and it's like, that's okay. But I really like it because I think there's a lot of, like, I get an opportunity to cast a wider net with like my impact on kids, as opposed to if I only have 35, I can't miss. And that, you know what I mean? It's not as beneficial at this level.
Yeah. It makes recruiting a lot more pressure, for sure on that, and then you got to let a guy loose, you got to cut a guy loose and things like that. How do you manage like a staff, with like, do you like with your staff? And cause I know how it is tough with, just with the budgets and stuff, like with your coaches. Like, how do you manage the staffs with having a developmental team too?
So we have, just like our staff now, I have Cassidy Gaines is my associate head coach and recruiting coordinator. He works with our pitchers. So he's full time. I brought back a former player. He's part time paid assistant position, and he works with our infielders and helps with our hitters. He's phenomenal. And then I have 2 graduate assistant coaches and a volunteer assistant. So we don't completely split our team in like, hey, you're varsity or JV, because we want to give ample time throughout the fall to evaluate, because we chart all that, like pretty much everything. But what we do is we schedule them as a group, and then come springtime, the 4, like my 2 GAs, my volunteer, and our part-time, they'll travel with the JV team and they'll manage that group. And then like Coach Gaines and I will do, like, say like the JV team was playing on a Monday, Coach Gaines and I would stay with the non-JV guys and they would go play. So it's twofold. It gets those JV guys opportunity to play and compete against other teams. But for my coaching staff, it gives, Coach Suarez and Coach Schutte and Coach Friend and Coach Freeman an opportunity to manage a game. Whereas I know this from experience, there's a lot that comes to being a head coach, where if you have any experience prior to the game 1 of your head coaching career, where you get to compete against someone and manage where it counts, that's extremely beneficial. And plus, it's a resume builder for them, where they can say, hey, I went and managed a college baseball game, or I ran our pitching staff, or so I just essentially listed out roles of every coach and was like, this is what you need to dominate within our staff. And it's worked out really well thus far. But I think part of that too is we're 0-0 right now. I think, if you know what I mean, it's sometimes things get a little tougher when things aren't going your way, like you said, when adversity hits. But our staff this year has done a phenomenal job of just dominating any task that we give them.
Yeah, I think it's great because I just know my buddies at Shepherd. Shepherd's pretty close to me, and just how they're really limited with their staff. So it sounds like you've got some good flexibility there where you're able to do those things as well.
Well, yeah, part of that comes with it, like having numbers. I mean, if I only had, if I had 30 players, I don't think I would have the staff I would have right now.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it's awesome. Now, you said you're 0-0 because with COVID and everything, you guys weren't able to do it last year.
What's that?
Is that what you said you're 0-0 right now? Because like what it is right now?
Yeah, I was saying, everyone's bought in until, sometimes when like every guy thinks they're a starter right now is what I'm saying. It's easier to do all those little tasks whenever if you're not losing games or guys aren't playing is what I'm saying. And as
Sure.
that's, you know,
It's not easy
just that
task
we're,
for
oh
sure.
no. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely different story when that lineup gets posted, and you
Yeah.
see where guys are. So how do you manage that, coach? Like, how will you go ahead? Like, so will you have like exit meetings here at the end of fall when you kind of get to see guys, say, hey, here's
Mm-hmm.
where I kind of see you, or will you kind of wait to say, hey, are you still a developmental guy? You got a redshirt guy? Like,
Mm-hmm.
will those meetings come out at the end of fall?
Yeah. So we meet. So as soon as they get on campus, we meet with every guy individually when they get here. Um, and we go over like academic goals, goals on the field. So guys who were there last year, we review what their goals were over the summer. So, and then we go through the fall. We'll send out our data throughout the fall, such as like quality bats or, like pitching results, like kind of like a chart as to like where velos and stuff at and pitch efficiency. And then like at the end of the fall, we'll meet with them again and go through, okay, where are we at with our goals? And then we go over like what they need to accomplish over the winter. And then we just have a plain conversation with them like, hey, this is where I see you're at right now. So for example, there's some guys where it's like, hey, if I'm making a lineup right now, you're not in it, or some guys it's, you have to lose 30 pounds before I can consider playing you because you're not effective at the weight you're at. Some guys it's, you're not effective in the zone. This is like the plan us coaches came up with to help you over break, and when you get back, that we think can help you be more effective. So it's just having, I think, the data we have, the staff we have, using the video, and then just constantly communicating with our players. So I mean, like if we have like hitters meetings and we have hitters journals, I can get an inside look at what our hitters are thinking and what they need constantly because we'll just look at their hitters journal. We'll go over like what they're thinking of their bats, what routines they're developing, what they're like. We'll go through their video, and same with pitchers. Like we video every bullpen, therefore it's not like a surprise to us when a guy comes into us and is like, hey, I don't think I'm doing this. We're constantly attacking that with them, but then, like I said, just our biggest thing is develop them through this whole fall, and then at the end of the fall, we sit down and say, where are we at? Attack it over break, and then hopefully come back in the spring and just compete and see who can play. And I'm a big believer too. If you've earned it in the fall, you've earned the right to fail in the spring. So like if you've been our best hitter all fall, and you've been our best hitter leading up to the spring, like the season, and you go 0 for your first 8, I'm not sailing the ship on you. You know what I mean? I'm not, hey, this guy can't play. I mean, he might have had one bad day. It was a doubleheader. Excuse me. So I think just what's really helped me is my background in special education is making everything measurable. Just anything that I can't. Now the culture stuff, obviously you can't measure all that, but if I can make it measurable and I can give them routines and give them data, it helps my job. Like if I'm writing a line, like for example, last year writing the lineup to start the season, I was like fighting myself as to who to start, this guy, or this guy. So I just went back and looked at all my information. I was like, well, this guy has had 10% better quality at bats the whole time he's been here. So that's been our process since day one here. And then we even took it to the next level this year, though. We chart like, who comes to class early. We chart who has their binder done. We chart who gets juice boxes at the end of practice, who's what's another, like who has the most quality at bats. So then we really take it to the next level where it's not just measuring like results physically. It's like who's the guy who's most bought in mentally in the things within they can control, because that's the guy at the end of the day that we can count on, we can trust.
Mm-hmm. Juice box after practice.
Yeah, that's
what's that for?
So like we talked a little bit ago, like you said, like the pace stuff. To me, it's reinforcing the last pillar of our culture, which is energy. It's never let circumstance dictate behavior, is what energy is in our program. So the juice box is a completely subjective like tool. So it's just whoever appears as though they gave the most energy, and whoever is the guy that like brought a lot of juice that day, a coach, we might give out one juice box, we might give out 10 at the end of practice. and then the kid comes up, and I don't know where this happened. It just had it. They come up and either they like chug the juice box or they make a speech. I don't know. They have fun with it. But at the end of the day, it's something that like it's a tool for us where it's like, hey, this guy's working for a juice box, and you'll see someone else run a little harder, or like a guy that like the biggest one is you're diving all over the place in BP and in individuals, like that's juice box material. If you're a pitcher hitting fungo and you're picking up your teammates with 2 strikes, that's juice box material. So again, it's a fun thing to get guys like focused on what they can control, but it was honestly, went back to teaching. Like I felt like it's an external tool you might use in teaching, but our guys really like it, and I love it. It gets me fired up. It gives them something to work for when those mundane tasks happen. But it's at the end of the day, it's fun. And like even when we hit a home run, like what our guys do now is they throw them a juice box, because
Nice.
that's what we're about, is bringing a lot of juice and having fun when we're out there. But it's having fun working. You know what I mean? It's having fun like we do within the warning track. You have to be running. So like rather than saying, hey, you're being lazy, we say that's not juice box material. You know what I mean?
Yep.
That's not bringing energy. So I love it. I mean, and our guys love it. And I'll probably be 80 years old coaching, dishing out high C orange to guys whenever they hustle on and off the field and they die for baseballs. And you know, that's just who we are. You know.
That's right. Nothing wrong with that. And you gotta be who you are, man. You gotta be real, because kids see that first and foremost. Dude, that's awesome. So I guess so here's a coaching question for me. It's always like, how do you manage all that? You said so you make it measurable with the quality of bats, coming to class early, getting the binder done, the juice boxes. Are you doing that? Are you tallying each one of these guys when it's going on? How do you manage all that?
Yeah, so it is somewhat overwhelming when you put all of it like if you just throw that all in a kid, or an adult, it's not easy. Right. So this year I feel that I've really, like, admittedly I could have done better last year with this being my first year, COVID. I mean, and these aren't excuses, but I'm just saying I needed to improve. So we sat down this summer as a staff and I was like, how can we make this stuff more measurable? So the first thing we did was I essentially made a curriculum for our culture. So we sit down with them in meetings and we say, this is what positivity is, be an adder. And it's a 20-minute presentation on how to add value in our program. Accountability is don't talk about it, be about it. Presentation on what accountability is. Communication, intentional dialogue, and body language. We literally I flash up pictures of people's body language and they just write out what they're doing. You know what I mean? And I go over what good and like the research. And then, like, same with energy, never let mistakes dictate behavior. And then we unpack that throughout the whole year. So in our meetings, before practice, after practice, they read a daily dominator every day. So it's by Brian Kane. It's a 1-page reader. They write down 3 things they're grateful for. They list a random act of kindness. They meditate. They exercise every day. And we have had one guy this entire fall not complete their binder to like a peak performance, which I like last year, it felt like every day, like half the guys didn't have it. Now, all these guys are guys that we recruited, but additionally, where that has come from, I found, so circling back, is we sat down, we made this curriculum. We give them, every single guy, a binder that has all of our rules, all of our expectations, all this material, and then we put them in accountability groups. So there's 4 accountability groups, and they're named after our pillars: positivity, accountability, communication, and energy. We assigned them lift groups for the entire fall. We assigned them BP groups for the entire fall. Like you get what I'm getting at. We put them in these groups. So the only thing that they had to focus on was dominating whatever task is in front of them. They're not worried about where they need to be. They're not worried about what positivity. They're not worried about any expectation. They can just go and attack it at 100% capacity with maximum effort and energy. Whereas I think last year, and I think COVID did this as well, is there was constant just like cortisol running through their veins. Like, I don't know where I have to be. I don't know if I can play. I don't know where I'm going to play. You know what I mean? So I sat down. It took a lot of time, but we listed out, hey, this is your accountability group. This is how you get points. This is how you get juice boxes. This is how you become a valuable person in our program. So we have a coach over top each accountability group. So, for example, rather than me saying, hey, text Like, we got to text this guy because he needs to get this done. We make it a challenge. Hey, you have 2 hours to get this done. If whichever group gets it done first gets 1 point. Whichever group gets it done, if you get it done within this time, you get, your whole team, gets this. So then it becomes, Frankie's texting Johnny saying, hey, we got to get this done so we can all get the points, because at the end of the fall, we get a prize. You know what I mean? Or we want to be the team that dominated every task. Rather than, if I'm like, hey, you got to fill this out, there's nothing behind that. But we made every mundane task into a character building opportunity or a challenge, because we define grit, like being gritty, as dominating the mundane tasks. So, gritty isn't rubbing dirt on yourself when you get hit by a pitch, or it's accomplishing those mundane tasks at a really high level. So again, I get a little long winded with this stuff, but it honestly just goes back to having a plan. We have a plan where this is how every guy knows their role and adding value to our program. So again, you'll see like I think like a lot of football teams do it. Other teams do it. They do it differently than us. But I've been thrilled with where our guys have. Like, we just did our challenge week where we split them into those accountability groups that competed every day at 5 a.m. We didn't have a single guy late, because they're not there for themselves. They need to be early for the other 10 guys in their accountability group. Mm-hmm. So, and I always say, like, common struggles what bring teams together. So, like, you think of like military, like guys in the military, their common struggles fighting the enemy, or like the boot camp. Like CrossFit gyms have great community because their common enemy is the workout of the day. You know what I mean? That's their common enemy. Whereas I say for us, I can be your common enemy if you wanted me to be. If you don't want to show up on time, you're probably not going to like me very much, because I'm going to hold you accountable every single time. Mm-hmm. But your common enemy should be an average team. That's your enemy, is being an average person, because, elite teams are teams that play in the regional, because they have elite habits. So, it's just having a plan. You can't execute a plan if you don't have one. I can always adapt a plan, but I can't execute it if I don't have a plan. So there's one thing I will be, and it's prepared, then, because I can control that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I like I said, the only thing for me is always just a matter of like, it's just managing that from a coaching standpoint. So like, just how you're able to keep. So like, what kind of like ideas do you have for like the end of the year? Putting all these points together for the end of fall. Is it like your banquet? Do you have a banquet typically at the end? Or do you have like I guess like some type of party, or maybe the guys will serve the other team food or something like that?
Well, we did that at West Virginia. We did like the steaks and PB&Js. So we had that fall challenge. It was like the winner, they get a prize. And then we have like a fall World Series where like the champions get like a bunch of juice boxes taped together into a trophy. And then they get like a shirt. But at the end of the fall, we do like a banquet, and the team that has the most points gets like custom shoes is what we're going to do. Now I've come to, as you know, there's like production issues like everywhere right now. So I didn't want to get if I ordered like shirts for them, they'd probably get it like next year. So we found that we're just going to order them shoes. And, but to be honest, I think that's secondary. Like, I haven't even told the guys what they're going to get, and they're like competing their tails off, because it's,
for sure.
You know what I mean? They want to compete for the guys with them.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
I could give them like a plain blue T-shirt, and I think they'd like fight each other over it at this point, because the two things that we sat down were like, we needed to get better at leadership opportunities and being competitive, because I felt those were the two things that we struggled in. So we compete at like the end of every practice. We'll compete more in practice, and then we do more community service. So then we can see who our leaders are, and we can see who our competitors are. So like when I say competition, like it might be tug of war, like literally.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. That's exactly what I was going to ask.
Yeah. So we do like one-on-one tug of war. We do like a cone drill where it's like by any means get the cone. I mean, it's like it could be we did like a flex arm hang, like a plank. It's not always physical either. It could be like we had the one day I had the 4 catchers all caught pens the whole day, essentially the whole first half of practice. And their last round of BP, I had the whole team around the cage, and we said whoever barrels the most baseballs, their team wins the challenge. So I mean, like because there's some guys who will get that and they'll thrive. They'll be like, hell yeah, they'll smoke 6 out of 8 baseballs, and there's some guys who will swing and miss at 8 straight when the 3 rounds before they hit everything hard. But I don't have that. So like I said this to them, 5 a.m. this week. I said, I can't recreate this guy throwing 97 and you having to pitch against one of the best hitters in the region, but I can recreate pressure. Like I know how to do that. I can recreate competition. And pressure is pressure. Like I said, if I drop you in the ocean and you have to swim to shore, if you've never swam a lap in your life, you're going to drown. But if you've practiced that pressure before, you have a far better chance of getting it. So, we just, like I said, it'll be anything. Sometimes players are like, hey, can we do this? I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Anything to get them competitive. And I think there's some value in, like, you compete with your buddy and you want to fist fight him because you lost, but also having the ability to 10 seconds later go eat breakfast or lunch with him and, cut it up, because you need that experience of failure and how you're going to learn from it, and also winning and how you're still going to be a good teammate.
Oh, that's great. It's awesome stuff, man. Awesome stuff. Oh, man. Well, I'm just totally and this is just right up my alley, thinking about this kind of stuff, and like you talked about the culture binder too, man, just kind of diving into a little bit of that, because that's I guess kind of where we are. You're basically talking about how you are developing your culture and you're developing your competitors and the grit,
Mm-hmm.
your grit guys, and how you're valuing, those guys who are within your group. So, I guess, was that part of, I mean, is the binder really something that you come out with during classroom stuff? Or is that something that they have homework? How do you kind of work out the culture binder?
So they get I'm here, I'll show you. I got one right here.
Cool.
So they get this is actually last year's. It's pretty much the same though, but they get a binder with like their name on the front. And then they have like the, essentially it's like, just not being a jerk, our code of conduct on the back. But within the binder, within the binder is like what pace is, our expectations, like their team contract, their groups and all that stuff. But that's secondary to what it is. Like what I said, like the binder is a representation of your commitment to the team. So they bring that with them everywhere. So like I always say, if you have to ask me if I should bring my binder, just bring it. Like bring it to lift, bring it to practice, bring it to the cafeteria. That's the team. That's the team you're holding right there. You know what I mean? That's your commitment to the team. So what they do in the binders, that's where they take like their hitters meeting notes, their pitchers meeting notes, their like their daily dominator. Everything is in that binder. So then, because like my opinions with culture are, I think every team you have kids on visits, every team's like, yeah, we have a great culture. Like I want to be able to sit down and show you, no, this is what we're doing to reinforce it. Like this is what we do every day to reinforce it, because like I truly believe it goes character, process, result. So like I have to reinforce character before I can teach them a process, before I can get an efficient result. So the most, like, people are like, yeah, we have a great group of guys, we have character. And this isn't, again, I'm not thinking of like any program in general, but like me, it's like, yeah, like we stunk last year, but I knew how to, like, I developed character within those players. You know what I mean? Like we did things that I've never seen before. And I was extremely proud of those players because of the character we saw. But then on the other side of it, if the guys aren't bought into developing their character and being better people, I mean, it's evident because they won't do their binder, they won't carry this with them, and they're not going to last. So to me, it's on one side, it's huge with development, because I can literally see if the guys are committed to this culture. Because are they filling out the information they need to? Are they retaining any of it? And then we are explaining to them what habits look like. We go as far as, you can't cross your arms, put your hands on hips in practice. It's negative body language. 60 to 70% of communication is done through body language. So if I see a guy on campus and he's sitting in class like this, I mean, like with his arms crossed, I know he's not bought into what we're doing, because he's not retaining what we're talking about. But if like we require front of class, no phones, if I'm walking through the academic building, I see a class of 20 baseball guys and they're fighting over the first seats. That's what I want. You know what I mean? Like to me, that's more commitment than them hitting a double, because they're doing the little things when I'm not there. So the binder is just a representation of the program. It's where they keep all their notes. And then we actually have a Google Drive that has all of our like baseball side stuff and then our culture stuff on it. So it's like our presentations, it's like our videos, and then so we meet, like I said, we meet in the mornings, and then honestly, it's like we just throw at them those mundane tasks, and like we scaffold it. So like we actually just changed how we break out, like we go through the pillars when we break. You know what I mean? Because we breathe, everyone touches everybody before and after practice, and then we break. Like we're constantly scaffolding up because if, like you said, if I threw everything at them to start the year, it would just be chaos.
Right.
But I hope that answered your question. I felt like I was circling a little bit
No,
there.
it did. No, that was great. No, that was great. You know, you hit on it's a commitment. I love how you talked about, you know, like they bring it all the time. It really just shows that just I'm all in. It shows buy-in for sure. And then the binder itself reinforces the program. You've got hitter, pitcher, you basically mental notes through your daily dominator. The Google Drive is also like an electronic version of that. And then, so you talk about the meeting in the morning. So is that where you kind of also reinforce or like maybe like there might be pages that you're trying to, okay, we're going to talk about the definition. We're going to define what these values are.
Yeah, so I think it's like we have scheduled to meet 3 days a week, but it just matters. Like so for today, like today we didn't meet, but tomorrow we are meeting. So the first, like I said, the first four are pretty black and white. It's those four pillars. But then like we met and talked about like grit. Like that was we talked about what grit looks like. And they took notes. So like some meetings are simply just like we call it like PGMs, personal growth Mondays. We'll go through and go over like some sort of activity or like we did a study. It was I saw it was the shot that Kawhi Leonard made over Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid to like go to the finals the one year. I don't know if you watched, but like we talked about like how Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid are both there to block out, but they both overrun the play. Ben Simmons didn't run before that, and those are all habits. You know what I mean? Like they're in the biggest game of their career, but they can't accomplish what they want to do because they half-assed it for however many months before in those reps. But those are, you know, so it just honestly depends on what we need. But like I said, I have a whole curriculum set out. So it's like the same thing. When I taught high school math for a little bit. I might be planning to go over sine, cosine, and tangent. But if we don't know how to divide and multiply, I'm going to step back and, you know, teach my kids what they need. So, for example, if we need a lesson on, you know, accountability, because that's what we need right now, I just circle back and do a different presentation. So those morning meetings, we go in, we break out, everyone claps, someone says, how we feeling? They say elite back. It goes why, how, what, whatever the presentation is, why we need it, how we can accomplish it, what it is. And then that's it. So it's like, I always like 1% of your day is like 14 minutes and 28 seconds. So my goal is I want to be right at 15 minutes. Cause I always say like, hey, you got 1% better before you went to class. And then that's pretty, and I also found I didn't like doing it before because I want them to go to the field. They show their binder to their accountability coach and then just go play. Like you already have the practice plan. You've already done your mental notes. You did your breathing. You got your touches up. You broke out. Now go work your tail off for, 3 hours and have fun doing it. As opposed to like, you have to sit and listen to me talking more. You know what I mean? Just go fun and have fun competing with your teammates.
Awesome. Love it, man. So is this making it pretty clear for guys who are bought in? How has recruiting helped with this, as you're basically presenting this to guys?
Well, I mean, and you know this as well, as your best recruiting tool is your current players. So I found we brought in a lot of, really talented players. We also brought in a lot of players that, we're taking chances on, But what I found is so we did that last week. We did those 5 a.m. workouts. It was a grind. I live an hour away. I'm waking up at 3 a.m. to get there, and I'm fired up because this is exactly what, I'm excited. But we got the biggest thing is guys are posting videos of themselves on their stories at 4:30 at the field. They're posting videos of our guys, dripping with sweat after 2 hours. And they have like their buddies then are like, hey, what do you, I want to do that. Whereas what I found is like, if you have a guy that wants to work out at 5 a.m., like you can play for me, any day of the week. But, whereas if we have the majority of the guys who are posting online, like, I don't want to be doing this, I don't want to do that, those are the kind of guys you get. So that's just one example. But I found that like your players aren't going to lie. You know what I mean? Like they might tell their buddies if they're pissed off they're not playing, but they're not going to be able to tell them that they're not prepared and that we don't value our culture and that they're not playing in front of scouts and that they're not, being developed. They can't lie about that. I mean, if they do, they shouldn't be in our program anyway. So I found that really helps. But then the proof is in the pudding. Like we go and play teams. We have our facilities have grown immensely, but at the end of the day, the people are what get you there. Like I would hope that, we talk, or if I go talk to somebody else, you're like, hey, he's really about it. He's building something there. When if I'm just not authentic and I don't have an answer for questions, or like I'm not authentic with the kids or the coaches, it just doesn't work. So it's been great recruiting, honestly. Like we're bringing in players I didn't think I would ever get, here right now at this time. But I think at the end of the day, you just got to be yourself. Like I said, like we said a little bit of like, if I'm trying to be some other coach or trying to emulate another program, it's just not going to work out. Like I got to be Salem and myself, we got to be the best at I got to be the best JT Heenan because that's all I know how to do. So
right.
That's really, really helped with recruiting.
That's great. I'm glad. Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's number one. You need to be real. Be real, be honest, be there. Like it's just, it's where it's at, man. It's 100%. So that's awesome. I'm glad it's working out. Cause I can see like, even just for the set, like you're going to get guys like, wow, it's just like, it's too much, or like, wow, like I'm all about it. But I'm sure that allows people definitely, like you said, from your developmental standpoint, you're definitely seeing that you can definitely, if a guy's going to be in it for the long haul, he can definitely get a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. Oh man, awesome stuff. Just thinking about, I guess another question I had too. I had a question because I just loved it. Is you talked a little about your hitting journals, just kind of circling back to that. I guess so. I'm digging into the binder itself. The hitting journals, like what do you qualify? Because like I've had journals that are really long. I've really feel like where kind of you've settled. I guess this is your, you've done the binder now multiple years. Where have you kind of settled on like what was, is it just blank? Does a hitter just talk about his at bats or talk about his day, or how do you kind of structure that?
So it goes back to like we give them the tools and then they use them as they need to. So I'm not like, I don't like hey, you just hit yesterday, give me your binder. If you don't have it done, you're cut. So what we do is there's a couple of things that are mandatory. So they need to have their green and red light routines is what we call it. So like your green is your go routine. So like when you're in the box, like your breath and then what you do between pitches, and then your red light routine is your routine when you need to stop. So whether it's a bad play, bad call, you shouldn't have swung at that, you should have swung at that, big moment, you'll hear guys like, hey, hit a red light, and that's what they go to. So that's like the first thing in their binder. They write a copy for them, they give a copy to me. The other thing we require is like we have all our hitting like routines in the back of our binder. They need to master their own routine. So like pregame, maybe on the road, at home, we have them write that out. And then when it comes to like actual like hitting journal material, I give them like a structure. So I have like 2 PDFs. It's some guys, which this is how I was. They put like what they saw for every pitch, what they did between pitches, like what they did with their breath. They'll, some guys, like you said, it'll be like, like a full paragraph structured out because I have like each at bat. Some guys like they'll journal at the end of the game. They'll journal like what they did, what they saw, because in game they don't like to unpack. And then other guys, their biggest journaling tools are during BP. So for example, there's a kid, he like hit 3 homers the other day in an inter squad. And so his biggest takeaway from the game was, I need to do what I did before today's game, next game. You know what I mean? Like my routine needs to match this routine. You know what I'm saying? So, what the biggest thing is like with their preparation is what I want to see, but I just constantly reinforce, like if I ever see a guy in a scrimmage or a practice after an at bat, like taking notes in their hitter's journal, that's juice box. Hey, Jared Palmyra, every time he hits, he is in his binder writing out what his feels were. He gets a juice box rather than like the stick or the carrot theory. I'm sure you've heard of that. Like the carrot in front of the donkey, you want to go get it, or you have to be the stick. Me whipping guys because they don't have their binders, like their hitter's journals done, doesn't do me any good. So we just really give them like I said, I have like 4 pages of just like every game, what they could like, what was your like, what were you looking for in that at bat, like what so it's honestly just a format for them to go run with as the building that. So like right now, the point we're at is they already have the green and the red lights and stuff. They're now like at the point where they're mastering their pregame routine. So our next hitters meeting, that's like their homework for the hitters are, you need to write out what your pregame routine is. You need to write out what you do if you can't hit your pregame routine. So say, for example, at home, your pregame routine is front toss, these rounds BP, go into the indoor facility and hit. If we're on the road, you might not have that opportunity. So you can't let your whole game be shattered because of that. So, again, it's one of those things when we go into our first game this year, when we go to Savannah State this year, who's a really good team, I want to be as prepared as we can be. So, if we sweep or we get swept, I'm going to be like, all right, at least we gave it our best shot and our hitters were prepared. So again, that's my system. I've just found if I force guys to write in their hitter's journal, they just literally write things because I'm telling them to, as opposed to whatever they need. But then we use that journal too for like meetings. So we do like, I have a 600 slide hitters meeting presentation that we just unpack throughout the year of like embedded with videos and stuff. Yeah.
Oh, solid, man. Just thinking, I think all good. I mean, at some level, whether writing or just simply talking about it, or simply taking the time to think about it, reflect about what they did. Whether guys really wrote about it, pen to paper, or texted about it, or talked to somebody about it, or literally just sat in a shower and thought about it.
Yeah.
Good hitters are going to visualize and reflect on that. So I think it's really nice that you kind of have that, guys are writing in it somehow, or you do have you said every pitch to, kind of having the blank canvas where guys can just kind of write their thoughts down, which is really cool. Wow. How do you do that on the pitching side? So like, it sounds like, you're really all about that with pitching. So do pitchers have that time to reflect on their performance as well?
Yeah, so it's Coach Gaines is our pitching coach, has done a phenomenal job with this. So we have like they're essentially like a black and white bullpen report. So it's like we chart every pitch, locations, velos, that's all there, like essentially written out for them. There are videos embedded in it, and then at the bottom, Coach Gaines took it's like essentially like a subjective version of pace. It's like, so they go through like, how did you feel you performed? What kind of preparation did you have before? What are things that you think you can do better? Like, similar questions to that. I mean, I can pull up exactly what they say, but then the player goes through and they type that out. They have like, I think it's like 24 hours after you throw your bullpener live, you need to get that completed, because then as coaches, we look at that and like, this guy threw 3 miles per hour harder today. He was an absolute savage on the mound. And then we go through and he's like, he added something to his band routine and it made him feel better. So it's a form of accountability for both of us, to where if I'm coaching that player, I'm like, dude, you skipped that in your mobility routine and you threw way more efficiently, or you did an extra 5 minutes of breathing that day and you felt more loose on the mound, where that doesn't get seen in the velo report. To where at the bottom, so it's so it's the same thing. Like for hitters, it's quality at bats and barrel percentage, and then their hitter's journal. For the pitchers, it's bullpen reports, and then them reflecting on their bullpen or their live outing. So we even go as far as with pitchers, if they don't complete that, like if a hitter doesn't have his hitter's journal, if a pitcher doesn't do his bullpen report, they cannot participate the next day. Like they can't like a pitcher, if he doesn't want to, like they only throw twice a week. If they don't, like live, you know what I mean? If they don't get their bullpen report done, they have to miss their next outing, because that information is just as important as the velos and the locations and the results, because that's how we collect data on how to make you successful, and how you collect data, which is way more important, on how to be successful. So that's the Coach Gaines has really done. Like, honestly, I've let him kind of like, he's the pitching coach. So I'm like, hey, this is what I want, but make it your own. But he did a really good job of like obviously scaffolding off of what I do and mastering it to a really high level with the pitchers.
Awesome. Yeah, it definitely, like you said, it creates ownership. Like you said, you got to be
No
able to get
doubt.
to helps to create ownership of the process, of their routine
Mm-hmm.
that they take into their bullpen or their outing, their performance.
Mm-hmm.
Super stuff. Super good. Super good. Yes, that's always one of that. That's always great. Yeah, the hitter's journal and their when you're videoing bullpens, is it from a standpoint of you're just looking at is it just a stance to go back and track balls and strikes? Is it a chance to look at mechanics, or I guess maybe all of the above? Like, what are your really key points they're looking at when you video bullpens?
So Coach Gaines, I would say, looks at bullpens differently than I look at like when guys throw live. So he's the pitching coach, so he looks more at like mechanics. He might, and he does he's gonna look at what I look at as well, but look at like maybe effectiveness of pitches. Biggest thing too is like body language between pitches, like um, bad call, how are they reacting? Maybe a hit, are they hitting their red light? Are they backing up bases? Are they feeling sorry for themselves? Are they feeling good about themselves? That's really the biggest thing I look at. But then it also just depends on the guy. Like Coach Gaines will, my pitching coach, he'll record like their drill work, their weighted ball work, so we can see like, hey, where's he come even when he's doing his, pivot picks in September is where's he at in February. But it just depends on the guy. I mean, like you said, all of the above. But for me personally, as a head coach, when I look at video, it's more of like of pitchers. It's more of like what is it that they're doing between pitches that makes them successful or hinders their success, as opposed to. Fortunately, I have a really good coaching staff to where Coach Gaines is looking at more of what mechanics are going to make him successful, and then for him, the mental stuff's a little more secondary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's diving into the details.
Mm-hmm.
And even just arm path, mechanical stuff, trying to throwing programs. It's understandable. Very cool. Oh, awesome. All right, so cool. That was a question. Love it. Love it. Love it. Cool, man. So how do you measure? So you love to measure stuff. So my question is like, and because I do too, how do you measure and what do you measure defensively?
So that's something we've like new this year. So we measured like in-game stuff last year. But in practice, we just simply chart like reps and plus or minus. So Pete Romzik, he was a graduate assistant when I was hired at Salem as an assistant coach. He did like a scoring scale, which we don't do at this point, but it was it was pretty subjective where you give like a +2 if it was a great play, or like a -2 if it was like a routine, like an error that like should have been routine play that should have been made. But how we chart defensively, we chart like lack of effort, and then we also chart like pace play. So if a guy like makes like a high effort play, or like he's in the right position or backs up a base, we chart that. But defensively, it's simply just we chart like the rep they get, and then plus or minus, and then we put like descriptions as to what the rep was. So like a great example would be if we found that we're like trying to make an evaluation as to who's to play shortstop, but one guy's had 3 times more opportunities than the other guy, we just have to make sure that the guy who's got less opportunities that we're trying to evaluate with gets those reps. So it's honestly more of a form of accountability. I would say it's definitely something we can expand on, but to be candid, it's just not it's not as much at the forefront like as to what the reps look like. More of what we found is we need to get them more repetitions to evaluate defensively. Like I think more specifically infield, because I work with the catchers, but we're pretty much overhauling our whole infield. So it's been really nice to look and say, hey, this guy's taking a bunch of reps, and this is what percentage he's at of effectiveness. So
Yeah,
it's just a data sheet, and we just chart.
Right. So you're allowing to see everyone. It's apples to apples. Make sure that those guys are getting the reps so that you can make a proper evaluation.
Absolutely.
And that's still great. That's still good. So is this in practice and in games? Like you found a tool that you like to use for practice and games?
Yeah, I've found it's obviously way easier in games because there's only one baseball going at a time. Um,
Right.
but like in practice, it's just we go back and as a staff look through, and there's always one guy charting during our work. So like even in BP, there's a guy throwing. There's but then there's always a guy charting exit velos and barrels. So same with like infield work or outfield work, whether it's a pitcher or a player. I mean, a pitcher or a coach. Um, that job is equally as important as the guy who's fungoing or throwing BP because that's the stuff that we can hang our hat on. Is like, oh well, this guy is at this position right now, and this is what he's doing. So on the other side of it, though, if you're competing to play shortstop, it's gonna encourage you to take more reps at shortstop. If that makes sense. Like so if you made like 3 straight errors the last time you were out, like maybe you can try to supplement that by getting more reps. Um, you know, but again, as you know, you could end up making more errors, but percentage could hopefully get better.
Okay. Cool. Love it. Yeah, I mean, because defensively, for me, it's always a matter of, I mean, if you were going at it from you're trying to analyze, I mean, because like right now, there's like the lanes. If you wanted to track the lanes and where guys kind of an air
Mm-hmm.
analysis, like where they're at within their lanes and how they're, what certain baseballs that they are. So it sounds like you're trying to do it more holistic of,
Yeah,
are you making a certain type of play? And then the note section is okay, he was at the place he should have been during this position, or
yeah,
the effort wasn't there, things like that.
yeah. We'll do like for example today, our infield work was we have 3 bases and it was red runners, yellow runners, green runners, and then we rotated through position. So like second base are working on red runners, like throwing with a red runner running. Shortstop was yellow, and then third was green. So when we go back through our data, it's like, man, so and so had like threw 4 balls away. It's like, well, it's because he was working on green runners. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? And then when we go like we do slow rollers tomorrow, we'll have all that data. And then when we do like backhands and then forehands and then slow roll, like we rotate through the infield that way, we'll have all that data as well. So we don't track like specifically lanes in practice because honestly it's just not something we do. Like we said, well, I value the holistic thing. Where like who's going to make the most plays, who's going to like our shortstop should be the guy that's taking the most reps and has the highest percentage of effectiveness. So yeah, so again, it's not like I know exactly what you're talking about. Or like hey, this is what the lane they're in, this is what they're doing, so then we can
Yeah.
adapt. But we've really put a focus on identifying what drill work we need as a whole team because we're pretty young, so we found that giving them all the ample opportunities really worked out. Whereas if we give them a lot of reps, they can kind of make their own bed, I guess is the best way to put it, as to who can play where.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Awesome. I think that goes back to knowing who you are. Like you said, just
For
knowing who you
sure.
are, doing what you're doing, and like you said, that's what your team needs. At young right now,
hmm
next year could be different.
hmm Yeah, no, that's the truth.
Next year could be different. That's just kind of where you are. So that's awesome, man. Um, awesome stuff. Yeah, those are the two things that I had there. Um, just reviewing that. Defense. I like the red, yellow, and green runners for sure. Will you do that from the offensive standpoint too? Like, let's say you kind of put your guys in buckets from an offensive category too.
Oh yeah, they we actually put them in buckets hitters as well. That's something we are actually like now we're going to program for starting next week because we feel like we have the data to put them classify them. So we have wall busters, gap to gap, and then grinders. So it's so grinder would be like an Ichiro where they can bunt for a hit, they can put a ball over somebody's head, but realistically, the guy who can run and do like might maybe put a ball in the 6 hole and he's on first. Gap to gap is your more true hitter. I was like a Michael Brantley or a Mookie Betts. And then wall busters. The best way I put wall busters is you have to put it over the left fielder's head in order to be on second base. You know what I'm saying? Like that's so again, for some reason guys don't like not most guys, but some guys are like, hey, I don't want to be a grinder. I want to be a wall buster. I'm like, well, that
Run
might not
faster.
just yeah, run. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly.
It's your
So
value of getting to second base is basically what you're saying. Like how you get to like
exactly,
your value
for
as an
sure.
offensive player is how you get to second base. And we
Hmm.
all know you
Yeah,
ain't stealing it. You ain't stealing
for
second.
sure. So when it comes offensively, like so there's those groups like in the box. So when I send out the lineups for the week, so like when we scrimmage, because we doubleheader, we split them into 4 inter squad groups, and we doubleheader Thursday, doubleheader Friday. They're highlighted green, yellow, or red. So if you're green, you are green to run the whole weekend.
Okay.
If you are yellow, you might get a steal or you might get the green light. And then red, you already know you're not stealing. So what that has done for our players is like some guys have been promoted from from yellow to green because they were like, hey, I want to steal more bases, so we give them the opportunity. They've done it. Some guys have been demoted, not because of speed, but because they. But at the end of the day, it's become like it's a form of competition where guys will come up to me like, I'm going to be green by the end of the semester. I'm like, great, I would love for you to be a green runner by the end of the semester, but when we do our conditioning or like you're going to need to run on your own because you're a 7-4 runner. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then some guys, it's, I had one player who's like, I'm not going to be the slowest guy on the team. I was like, I would love that to happen. I'm on the same team as you here. I'd love for you to get faster. But I think that's something we've changed this year where our personnel also has put us in a position where we can run a lot more. Like you said, how can you get to second base? We had a lot of guys last year who they literally had to hit it off the wall in order to be on second, and it would be close. Whereas this year, we have quite a few guys with 2 strikes. If they put a ball in play, I mean, there's a chance they're getting on base because they're that fast. So yeah, but yeah, I'm glad you asked that. It's made it a lot more exciting, to be honest, is giving those guys it's nice to have a guy on first you can green light as opposed to not having a guy on first you can green light.
Yeah, is that mostly just based off of speed? Is it still based off of your data during games?
So it's both. I mean, I would say right now, it's based off of like we're letting them fail still, if that makes sense. So it's like if you want to run, if you're highlighted as green and you want to run, just run, because then we can look at the data. Like we go compete against PSAC NBC schools. I'm not just like, hey, you can run. You know what I mean? Like there needs to be like data we've collected to say, hey, this guy stole like 15 bases in the fall. Like he's definitely going to be a guy that we can run.
Yeah.
So as of right now, it's speed. I would say and a base running ability. We do base running every single day. So I mean, it's the data we've collected on like speed, what they're doing in games. But I would say, like you said, this time right now is just like we coach them up. Like we do 3 days full practice, meetings, and all that stuff. And then when they go play Thursday, Friday, it's go compete, and we'll evaluate and then adapt to what each guy needs and what our team needs. Yeah.
How do you, when you talk about programming, so how do you program the difference between a wall buster and a gap to gap guy? What's the biggest difference in programming?
So I actually have listed like different BP rounds. I would say a lot of it's like has to do with approach and what pitches they're seeing in BP. So I would say the biggest difference would be like a grinder and a wall buster.
Yeah,
So
sure.
Like a grinder is like picture your little guy that can bunt for a hit or slash or bounce the ball in the
have more
infield.
bunt rounds, right, than the wall buster will.
He's gonna have a slash round. He's gonna have his 2-strike approach needs to be vastly different than the wall buster's 2-strike approach.
Sure.
Like the
you
wall
don't care
buster,
about wall buster's approach.
Yeah, to me it's like you still have to hit it over somebody's head. So,
That's right.
You know what I mean? So where a grinder is if you essentially swinging bunt a ball down the third baseline, you might be on second like the next pitch.
Right.
So the biggest programming is their BP rounds, and then we do front toss before their pre at bat work is going to be different. But right now where we're at is we have 8 different so essentially it's like 3 days of training according to like a focus. So it might be like backside drive, front side push, like bat path week. We did like a timing and rhythm week. We did a like velo training, off speed training. And I scaffolded that like according to like from the feet up. So with the first week was timing and barrel awareness, and then we did what was that? And then it was the backside drive week. So that gave me a better idea of where are all these hitters at. You know what I mean? And like, what are they doing in games? What what's their identity, not the identity I give them. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
like if I have a guy who he's claiming to be, a grinder in the box, but he hits like he's 250 and he hits all balls off the wall, I might be like, dude, like you can hit the ball off the wall, like maybe hit some more doubles. You know what I mean? Make that your identity. But giving them, like you said earlier, giving them ownership to what their routine is, it was the first step. And then we're at the point now where we're actually stepping into next week. It's like, these are the rounds that I think you should take pre-game. These are the rounds that I think we need you, like would make you a better player. And then just adapting from there. So the biggest part of that programming is giving them like the preparation and the rounds that they need before they go into play.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, a lot of BP stuff for sure. Especially BP and station. I'm just thinking station work too that you would have, if you doing some station stuff, would be
Oh,
different.
you mean like dry drills and stuff like
Possibly.
that?
I
Or
mean, it could be. I mean, I don't know if is it just is the pro. I'm just wondering what your programming would entail. Like I know sometimes if I was programming guys, certain guys, I mean that would also be like our cage work during practice, not necessarily just
yeah,
BP. Don't get me wrong, that's definitely true. Like, but it will get into like cage stuff too.
yeah. So we have so what they're doing in the indoor facility or on the field, that's going to be accommodated more independently as opposed to like what group they're in. So
Okay.
for example, today I had two left-handed hitters that they were doing their like bat path stuff, but the antecedent to their issues with their bat path had to do with their legs. You know what I mean? Like they weren't getting their legs on time, so then they had to dive at everything. So I'm going to accommodate their pre BP rounds to that. But again, like I have listed out like what those front toss drills are, what drill work they should do. Like we have literally in our plan is we have a section for what machine work they should attack, the 4 like BP rounds they should do, the 4 like front toss rounds they should do, like what the machine, and then like we have dry drills according to what so essentially like the vitamin C to keep your swing healthy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's all within our programming. And then I actually have an Excel sheet that goes from as simple as dry swings, tee, all the way to machine work. That's like listed out to what each. So like, hey, I'm not getting my legs on time, or my bat path's bad, or I can't hit a pitch away. They can literally go to that Excel, click on the section they want, and it gives them all the drills that they would need to accommodate. So it's like a hitting development plan according to like whatever I get, like whatever is sick within your swing or whatever.
It's like a hitting doctor.
Exactly.
Yeah. They're like, I got a sickness, coach.
but to be candid, like you said, the programming, the stuff outside of their BP rounds, that's pretty independent. Like that's pretty like there's 2 wall busters that are like 2 wall busters in a group, or grinders in a group, that their routines and like whatever rounds I assign them before they go into the box might be completely different, and they almost look like exactly the same hitter. It's just whatever they need at that time. But biggest thing is when you get in the box, that's when we start charting. So that's like where I'm evaluating, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. That makes total sense. I appreciate it, man. That was good. I love the 3 different hitters, and that's great. You kind of took like Deggs's, Matt Deggs is always about his Buffalo and his Dur, and you just kind of made it your own. That's great, and and you define what those were, and then your green, yellow, red runner is great, and I love how you have it for both sides, because then it's easily to know, like, hey, we're doing this offense. We know, hey, these are green runner, he's a red runner. And that's easy, easy scout stuff too.
It's also cool, like we'll scrimmage, so everybody knows if the other guys are red or green or yellow, so you'll hear them like verbalize it to each other, like, hey, like yellow runner, you know what I mean, like, or green runner, got to get it out. And I'm like, It's like we have scouting reports, but they're just guys on your team, because it's so we will have those on their wrist during games. But I mean, it's just interesting that like I'm like, oh, you actually did read, the practice plan. You know what I mean? Which is good, which is a good problem to have. But
absolutely.
I just think it's guys will talk trash to each other like, hey, you're only yellow and I'm green. And I'm like, how old are we? But seriously, it's cool to see that guys are bought into like things that, I value too, which is having the ability to run.
Just the ability of being prepared too.
For sure.
That's awesome. No, that's great. Wow. So we've rocking it, man, for over an hour now, buddy. So man, that was quick. That was really quick. Man, is there anything that you'd like to get into? Maybe we haven't touched base. Like, is there something that you'd like to get into? Last, maybe parting words, something in conclusion here, man, because you really got through it all, man. It was awesome. Went through a lot.
Um, Nothing I can really think of off the top of my head. I mean, is there anything else? You know, you can. I mean, you gave a whole list of stuff there, but
Yeah,
I
I
thought
mean,
we covered a lot.
you did. You covered a ton, from the culture, and then we got into just your red, yellow, green runners, and classifying your hitters and how you're doing that, and that. Oh man, it was really super great. Um, I mean, let's say if more people want to ask more about it, man, what's the best way to contact you, get in touch with you?
So I mean, you can like email me. It's just james.heenan at salemu.edu. But then they can, I guess, follow me or reach out to me on Twitter. It's just Heenan underscore hacks, as you know that. But
Eden
um,
underscore.
hacks, HACKS. That's actually a funny story. That when I was at West Virginia, Cody Atkinson, who's now the hitting coordinator with the Rangers, he was our volunteer, and I was a GA. And I don't know if you've been to Mon County, how they have that mattress store in center now.
Yeah, yeah.
And so they were building that when I was there. And the one day it was me, Cody Atkinson, and Chase Illig, who he's now in AAA with the Yankees. And somebody said, what are they building out there? And Cody, I don't know why he said it, but it turns out it's like, oh, that's JT's hitting facility. They're going to call it Heenan Hacks. Like Heenan Hacks.
Yeah.
And for some reason it like stuck within a few people, and I started hitting with guys, and I'll send out, I actually send out like morning messages 5 days a week, like a mental message 5 days a week. I've done it for like 4 years now, and it went from like Heenan Hacks to like Heenan Hacks. You know what I mean? Like a hack to something. So it works both ways. So for my buddy Chase, like I lost a bet, so he's like, you have to change all your social media to Heenan Hacks. So that's what it is now. But
Dude, that's great.
yeah, it's fun, but that's my name now.
That's it. Heenan Hacks, man. Heenan Hacks. Great follow. Great follow. Love the stuff that you're
Hey,
doing there,
appreciate
man.
it.
It's awesome. It's awesome stuff.
You as well.
Coach JT Heenan just crushing it with some great information, diving into his program from his culture binder, which talks about his core covenants, black and white bullpen report, get into his green light, red light moments from in his hitters journals, planning out his personal growth Mondays. They always start every program out with the why, how, and what. You can just tell the process that he has, the systems in place to get those kids from where they are to where they want to be, to get them better. Is great stuff. He's doing the hard work. He's in the trenches, building a program, helping it grow. Anything else that you'd like to reach out to him for, again, email him at james.heenan@salemu.edu. Heenan, Heenan, james.heenan@salemu.edu. Twitter DM at Heenan underscore hacks, HACKS, Heenan underscore hacks. You'll get a chance to talk about him more about his bucketing, wall busters, gap-to-gap grinder guys, how he's programming those guys, his culture binder, now the curriculum that he has from the things that they need, from focus to adversity to grit, and how they have defined their core values in their program. All the things that they have measuring their offensive guys, from quality at bats to their juice box guys. Love the juice box guys, and handing their juice box out. And know they got to bring the juice each time. And he's talked about the carrot and the stick, handing out the juice box is not cracking a whip and not being so, I guess, more punishable, and rather than he's rewarding what he wants, praising what he wants. It's great stuff. So I'll constantly evaluating, constantly with those measurables. I love the highlight, the insight he talked about there with the 35-man roster. That Division One's got to get it right. Division Two, you can get a chance to take more of a chance on a guy, and just has the good program in place. And as we talked offline, just wanting to continue to learn, making sure that, in the next 3 years we are tweaking things, we're working on something, we're trying new things, and as we are moving forward, we continue to get better. So, loved it. Love the conversation. Coach Heenan, can't thank you enough. Again, can't thank Will Mine and those guys at Netting Pros as well to be part of the Netting Pros family chat. And again, thank you guys for hanging out with us. Appreciate it. Please feel free to give me any feedback. TreyTCobb@gmail.com. My Twitters are open at Coach3Cobb on Twitter. Happy to talk with you and share anything that I might have, or happy to help in any way I can. So until next week, keep getting better.